All right, let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Morgan. I'm the Director of Development here in the 40th Ward office, and tonight we are having another edition of our community zoning meetings. Tonight we will be talking about the property at 2300 West Ainslie. We've had a meeting for this property last October, and we heard some feedback from the community, which we passed on to the developer, and the developers, and they have taken that into account and have come back to present a new presentation tonight. So how our community zoning process works is basically we have the developer fill out a form in our office, we take a look, and then we schedule a meeting, and then we have the meeting. And so tonight the developer will give a presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session. We ask that you keep this to question and answers, just so we have enough time for everybody to speak. If you have a question or answer, or if you have a question, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Try not to add any comments to the chat, as it can get a little confusing for me trying to make sure everybody's questions are answered. And then after that, I will open the open public feedback form during this meeting, and you have from 2 weeks from tonight to fill out that form, and then we'll compile all the comments, and our office will make a decision a week after that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Scott Schiller for his presentation.
Morgan, thank you for organizing and hosting this meeting, and everybody, thank you for coming out and taking the time to listen to some information about our.
Scott, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just, oh, it is me. It's me. Go ahead.
Okay, it's not you, it's me. Morgan, thanks for organizing this meeting, and to you and the rest of the ward office. I appreciate everybody's time and allowing us to share our vision for 2300 West Ainslie. If you can, Morgan, if you could please allow me to share my screen. And
you should be able to share now.
Okay. No, I'm on, I clicked on my name, and I'm looking for the share screen option.
Do you have the bottom at the, do you have the button at the bottom of the screen?
Share screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, can everybody see 2300 West Ainslie, a new proposal?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, this is an aerial view of 2300 West Ainslie. The front of the property is Ainslie. The right side is Oakley. The left side is the church. And the building on the property is the rectory. The rectory is basically, it's a dormitory style building. It's where basically where the priest lived that worked in the church, in the parish. The building is vacant. It's been vacant for some time, and it's pretty much functionally obsolete in the sense that its layout and configuration is not something that would work for most of today's uses. But it's a beautiful building, and it's a building that we have a strong desire to see saved and rehabilitated, so that it will exist as an asset to the community. So we previously presented a plan for this property, which I'm assuming that many of you are familiar with, and this project right here was denied. This project called for the conversion of the rectory, the existing building, into new residential apartments, and the construction of a new 8-unit building on the east side of the property. This property was going to have 3 affordable units between the entire development. The amount of green space that seemed to be appreciated as a sort of a strong community asset. This is the yard in front of the rectory, was going to be greatly reduced. And this project was going to be built in accordance with a business zoning. And this site plan, the slide here, you see the building that we were proposing, you see the rectory, and in the lower left-hand corner, you can see the architectural site plan that shows the massing of the building here on the southeast corner, and then the rectory here. Are you able to see my mouse as I'm moving it about?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to go through here to back up a slide is, that was the introduction and the prior proposal. I'm going to go forward with a new proposal that we'd like to present to you, and also outline what would be an as of right scenario for the property, which is basically what could be done in accordance with the current zoning. So again, this is the project that was denied, and the available options are shown on this page. The first one is the option that we're going to be presenting to you tonight, which basically sticks with the conversion of the rectory into residential units, and now replaces the existing 8-unit building with a much smaller 5 townhome development. A project that, as I'll go through in the details, is certainly smaller in scale and scope. And I think that it's going to hopefully preserve many of the nice features of the property that were desired by the community. Option 2, which I'll be discussing, is the as of right scenario, which is basically the demolition of the rectory and the construction of 5 new single-family homes. And that's something that can be done without any zoning change. So what you're looking at here in this slide is a view of the 5 townhomes as they will exist along Oakley. Traditional design, it's a prairie style architecture. It's something that we think is consistent with other buildings in the area, at least, if maybe not exactly, but in terms of the feel. Something that will be consistent with the rectory, and something that will provide a great family product for people living in the area. So basically, I'm going to show you how this looks on the rest of the property too, but a couple things to note about this is that this is going to be done in accordance with a residential zoning. There's no commercial zoning here. We will be complying with the 20% affordable requirements ordinance as before. For the 5 homes, each home will have its own parking space, so a 1-to-1 ratio. It is, again, as I just noted, a family product. I'm going to take a moment to walk you through the floor plans a little bit, but basically 4 of them are 4-bedroom townhomes, and one of them is a 3-bedroom townhome, and 3-story prairie style architecture. This next page here is the proposed site plan. Rectory remains the same, and you can see here how the units all face Oakley, run alongside Oakley, and the back of the units face into the common courtyard. This here is a aerial elevation. The drawing of the townhome, it's primarily done for placement, to see how it sits on the property. I think the prior vision for the 8-unit building, it crowded the property much more significantly than the townhomes are doing. The building, I think, the rectory building is much more of a standalone building now, and the common elements of the yard are much more preserved in terms of that community asset. So this is this is the elevation here along Oakley. This is the site plan here. So you can see how the property is going to sort of lay out. And in this image here, this is an aerial view of what it's going to look like and the massing of the building when it's complete. These are the floor plans to the units. Starting here, the first floor is going to be slab on grade, have a front entrance here that will open up to a bedroom, I think most likely a guest bedroom or home office for people living here. And a first floor family room, washer and dryer, storage, mechanicals, and a bathroom down here. Second floor, fairly typical townhome layout. This will be the main living floor. A kitchen, pantry, powder room, dining room, and living room. And then the third floor will have 3 bedrooms, a master suite with its own bathroom, and then 2 other bedrooms that will share a common bath here. Here's some information on the zoning requirements. The zoning that we're requesting is RM 4.5. Which allows for a floor area ratio of 1.7. And we're building slightly under the amount of square footage that the RM 4.5 would allow. The RM 4.5 allows for a 47-foot building height. We're going to be building 33 feet. It's a shorter building than we were proposing before. So the height isn't going to be as of an issue. The zoning would allow for 8 units, 8 townhomes. We're building 5, and then the next runs through the setbacks that we're going to be requesting for the project. It talks about the automobile requirement here, which is 1 to a unit. We're going to be doing 1 to a unit. And the rear yard open space requirement, of land required to a townhouse, we're exceeding that. 200 square feet is required. We're building 217. So this page here is basically, it's a discussion of the feedback that we received through the Alderman's office from the community and how these community concerns were addressed by this proposal. So there was a strong sentiment expressed to us that the property not receive a business zoning. Although that is a side note, that's a fairly common thing. And there was no intent for us to be having any sort of businesses operating here on the property. There was a strong community sentiment that nonetheless that the property doesn't receive a business zoning. So we are doing away with the B zoning request, and we're requesting now a 4.5 zoning, RM, residential zoning. The size, I put together some numbers here to sort of go through how significant the reduction of massing is of this structure. The original 8-unit building was over 17,000 feet. The townhouse building is about 10,500 plus feet, which is about 40% less mass on the property. We have 5 units now instead of 8, which is a 40% reduction in unit count. And we have now 42 feet along Ainslie Veris, excuse me, let me fix a typo here, versus 56 linear feet facing Ainslie. So I want to just bounce over here to show you what that number means. On the original site plan, you could see here, the building basically was cut significantly deeper into the lot along Ainslie. This is the side of the building that faces Ainslie. And you can see here that we cut it back significantly in this site plan. to the point of it being it's basically a 25% reduction of that elevation. The community wanted more green space, and this building is so much smaller than the one previously proposed, that there's just significantly more green space accordingly. And you'll see in a moment when we go through the as of right single family scenario that basically outside of the private yards of each of the single family homes, the green space is lost entirely. Affordability was an issue that was communicated to us from the alderman's office, that the community wanted the affordable units to remain. And as such, we are preserving the original 3 ARO units that were offered in the original proposal. And the 5th issue that's, I guess, maybe a little harder to quantify, the neighborhood found our building ugly. And we worked hard to come up with an elevation that we think is more attractive and more consistent with the other buildings in the community. So going back to next onto the elevation, I'm showing here on a slide, and I'm happy to receive input on this point, is 2 alternative color schemes. The first color scheme, my preference, is a lighter color scheme. It's maybe more contemporary, and it's a lighter brick. I'm going to show you an example of that. And the bottom one is a much more traditional red brick, matches the rectory. And I think that if the neighborhood is looking for something that is more traditional, then probably the lower elevation would be a appropriate course of action. So this is a project here that I did some years ago at Belmont and Lakewood. And this uses the brick that I'm proposing in the lower elevation. And if I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth here, but if you look at the style of the rhythm of the windows, basically the style, the banding, the limestone banding, it's pretty similar to this building. And basically my marching orders to the architect were make it look like Belmont and Lakewood. And the reason being is that this project was very well received by the community. At least that's the feedback we got. It seemed to really fit in, and it's got a great prairie style character to it that I think that just works in Chicago. And you could drive by and take a look at this building at Belmont and Lakewood, 1301 West Belmont, and you could see kind of what it's going to look like. Now, there's some differences. This building goes up to a penthouse. The units are a little bit wider, but the style is the same. Now, this upper building is similar to a building on Lincoln Avenue, and you could, here's a picture of that elevation of a finished product that I did, and you can see it's a desert iron spot light brick with hardy board and black windows. In any event, those are the 2 color schemes, and that is kind of how I'm envisioning the project. So switching now to option 2, which is 5 single family homes. And this is what is known as an as of right scenario. The property is zoned RS3. These are RS3 homes. There's 5 lots of record. The rectory is orange rated, which means that it's of some significance as a building, but it's not a landmark. And it means that the demolition process is a little more attenuated, but it is still a building that could be demolished. If the community decided that this was a more desirable direction. So the layout of this, basically would be five high-end single-family new construction homes as of right, based on area comps for other new construction. They'd all probably sell in the mid $1 million plus range. Each property, each home would probably have or would have a private yard in front. I imagine, like many of the other single families, it would be gated and private like that. So there'd be a loss of the community green space. There'd be no, because of the size, because it's an as of right development, there's no requirement for affordability. And this would, as we've been discussing, provide for the rectory demolition. So that's option 2. And I'm now available and would like to, any questions that anybody has, I'd be happy to discuss.
Okay, great. We are moving to the question and answer section. So feel free to put in the chat, and I will get through the questions as we go. We'll start with Mr. Woodley. One, the rectory conversion plan has changed. It appears to have gone from 5 to 12 units, correct?
And if that's not correct, how many were planned before and now, and how and why are units proposed? I don't think it's more units, but you can speak to that, Scott.
I'm sorry. So you're asking me the number of units in the rectory? Yes.
In the rectory, yes.
Yes. So originally, we had 9 units in the rectory, and we've increased that to 12. And the decision to do that is that we kind of got into the architecture. So the box of the building stays the same, and we are basically reallocating the space from 9 units to 12 units. And there was a couple reasons behind that. One was just sort of as we were getting into the architecture of how the units were going to lay out, the units that were duplex units just didn't seem to work for various reasons. They didn't seem to work very well, or the way that we thought they should have. And the other issue was, there was a desire for us to maintain the number of ARO units that was previously presented. And that's a function of percent of total number of units. So by increasing the number of units, we were able to work with the higher ARO number.
Okay, great. And then questions 2 and 3 are asking both if both parts of the property are going to be rental or for sale, and these are all rental units, or all apartment, or they're all rental, correct?
So the rectory units are definitely going to be rental. The townhomes, our current thinking is that it's going to be a rental project as well, but we're also evaluating it as a 5 for sale units. And that's something that, and part of that, it's going to be driven by the economics at the time we bring the product to market, as we come closer to completion, whether it makes more sense for the townhomes to be a rental or for sale project.
Okay, and then will new homes for sure be all 23 facades as shown in rendering?
The new homes could be any. The question is, what will the new homes look like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I picked.
I'm going to go with I picked 5 what I think are sort of like fun placeholder designs. If the community went in that direction, then there'd be a whole design process on what, on the single family homes. So this image that's up on the screen right now, this wasn't to suggest this is what the houses are going to look like. It was meant to say, this is what the massing of the homes are going to look like. This is how they're going to sit on the lot. There's a lot of different scenarios of what they might or may not look like.
Okay, great. I'm gonna go to Pat because Pat had a hand raised before the other questions in the chat. So Pat, you go ahead and unmute and ask your questions, and then we'll resume to the Q&A in the chat.
Thank you. Scott, can you tell me if this is approved, what time would construction begin every day? And what days would you be working? Is it Monday through Saturday or something else?
Sure. So first of all, Chicago has a fairly strict and enforced ordinance about construction not starting before 8 a.m. And that is something that we will certainly hold to Monday through Friday. On weekends, I believe there's a later start time. Morgan, you're nodding. Is it 9 a.m.?
Yeah, I believe it's, you can set up at 8, but you can't begin until 9.
You can't begin until 9. And that would be our intent to comply with the city's ordinance, noise ordinance, as it relates to construction.
And would that include the time that the trucks arrive? As in, would loud trucks be arriving at 6 a.m. but then not starting until 8 a.m. or would the trucks arrive at 8 a.m.?
They can arrive, like they can set up the site and the trucks can arrive 1 hour before work begins.
Okay.
According to in accordance with the noise ordinance.
And so the challenge here, and I'm going to try to play Jeopardy and put this in the form of a question, but I think we need to understand what's going on over here. And what's going on over here is we have, massive projects that have occurred and that are ongoing.
Right.
And school is at 8 a.m. And we have trucks that pull into the St. Matthias parking lot. We had a dump truck in there the other day, right at 8 a.m., right during drop off. Not safe. There were countless other issues in the past with moving vehicles being near children, where children are walking behind, moving bobcats with drivers in them. Illegally parked vehicles blocking the view. You can't even see where you're crossing. So I'm saying all that to say is, will you commit today that if this is approved, whatever it is, that safety will be a priority and that it will be understood that school starts at 8 a.m. and that kids are coming out anytime after, let's say 2 o'clock. On Wednesdays, it's 2 o'clock. Every other day, it's 3, and also thereafter. So my question is will you commit to a level of safety that, frankly, we have not seen in the past year and a half plus over here?
Yes. And, Pat, obviously, I understand. So number one, I'd be happy to meet with you on site when we're ready to start construction and kind of like look at the scene, because it sounds like, you have a boots on the ground understanding in the community where the problems have been. And I'd be happy to meet you out there and sort of like, okay, here's, this is the way that traffic is moving down the street. This is the way parents are picking up kids. And try and come up with a construction plan that works for the community. I just had a construction project next to my house and it was a pain, and I got kids, and I know these issues from the other side. And I don't want to come in and be an unwelcome guest in the community. So the short answer is yes. I will abide by the city ordinances, and I also would be happy to meet you out there when we're ready to break ground and kind of talk about these things again.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would encourage you to, come by at 7:45 any morning and just take a look so that you have a sense of how congested Ainslie gets, especially at Claremont, but also at Oakley. And if you don't know it, Ainslie is one of the smallest two-way streets in the neighborhood. It's just as tight as portions of Bryn Mawr. It is very difficult to get around as is, and it would be extremely difficult to get around with the type of, 30, 40-foot trucks, equipment, and everything that we've seen. Because another issue is not having enough space on the footprint, which, looking at these houses right now, you can't build those without illegally going down Oakley 30 times a day, which is what happened on Argyle 30 times a day for almost a year. That's not a question. So I'll stop talking, but I appreciate your offer that if this is approved, that you would meet, because I think that would be essential to avoid any horrible accidents, which we have come pretty close to in the past year and a half or so.
It'd be my pleasure, and I also see the benefit to me, because if I'm able to get ahead of any problems, because I've been building in this city a long time, and if you create a nuisance, people call the alderman's office. That's just how it works, and then it becomes a problem that it's better to get ahead of time. One of the interesting things about the townhome layout here is just by the nature of it, there's more staging area. The new building is much smaller, and the area that we have to work with is just more generous. That's always the problem when you're building infill developments. And, if you're building like we've built in the past, say on a single family lot that's 25 by 125, and you have a house on either side of you and it's all cheek and jowl, there's nowhere to put anything. So this gives us a little more, the townhome scenario certainly gives us a little more breathing room.
And we are noticing that I live right here. So I've noticed that difference with the convent project going on, the difference in having the space on the land. That was not the case with the 4 houses that were built on the old parking lot, which is very similar to your option 2. In your option 2, there's no logistical way to build that, in my opinion, without breaking traffic laws multiple times a day with construction equipment.
Thank you, you guys. I think we have to move on. I want to make sure we get all the questions. We only have until 8 o'clock, but happy to continue this conversation. And Pat, I do appreciate you phrasing your comment as a question. That is number 1 rule of zoning meetings. If you please try to phrase everything as a question. And we're happy to continue the conversation offline, but we just need to move on to the next question. And that will be, I've got, what is the setback along Oakley, and how does that compare to those buildings north and south and west side of Oakley?
The setback here on Oakley is 5 feet. Basically, here's a picture of it here. You can see the little yards that each of the townhouses have. And this is basically, the building is set back. There's the city parkway, the sidewalk, and 5 feet to the building. I don't know offhand. Let's see if it's anything in the area. You're talking about properties on the other side of the alley, correct? Is what the question is?
How does that compare to the buildings north and south south of the west side of Oakley? I believe.
Okay, so I see in this aerial elevation, and it's hard to tell what the building. You know what? Let me go out there, take a look, and I could send you an email with this answer.
This person is asking, why not request a variance as opposed to an RM 4.5, which if granted could lead to a much larger development for some contractor?
I'm not sure I understand the question. A variance for, I'm not sure I really understand the question.
I think that I'm not super clear on Bob's question. I don't think a variance would allow for this density here. I think a type 1 zoning change is required. But I'm making a look at my chat. I don't know if we'll move on to the next question. Okay, so Malva is asking if you receive a zoning change, what stops you from switching the plan to say 8 townhomes from 5, or flipping the plans or zoning to something else? I can speak to that. Aldermanic zoning changes are contingent upon the project presented to us. So the zoning change is granted for the type of project that the developer will be presenting. So they would not be able to change the project outside of what we agree upon beforehand. Where is the parking? How do we know there won't be any Airbnbs?
Well, the parking is, it's here. You can't see it in this, but here, the proposed site plan, the 5 parking spaces for the townhomes are right here alongside the alley, coming off of the alley. We decided that was the best. So often you'll see a townhouse development where the parking kind of comes directly into the townhouse, which would, if we did that, it would require curb cuts on Oakley for each of the units, which I think would be a disaster. The community would lose the parking there. You would have cars going over the sidewalk. And, the alleys are made for parking. So that's why we put the parking where we put the parking.
How close? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, how close will these proposed townhomes be to the sidewalk?
So in there, you can see they're set back 5 feet off of Oakley.
Mm-hmm. Regarding option 1, would it be possible to modify the south facade of the townhouse building to match the rectory's southern facade, meaning that the roof would be pointy, triangular, and it would complement the existing architecture of the rectory and could possibly add a bonus room. It's also a beautiful architectural feature, which would be a nod to the neighborhood's roots.
So is the question, would we give the townhomes a pointy roof, basically?
I guess the question is it a possibility to make them look more similar to the rectory's southern facade?
So, I'll tell you something kind of interesting about this, is that the original proposal, and I think one of the, people thought this was very ugly. And I think that part of it, this wasn't a terrific rendering, but we went out of our way to try and design something that was consistent architecturally with the rectory. And if you look on sort of these horizontal features here with the lunettes at the top and the windows, this was basically taken from the rectory. And that's something that I understand that the community at the end of the day didn't like. So, we went and created what I'm going to try and find. There's the elevation, is a prairie style. I imagine there's people on this call who are going to say this is great, and I imagine that there's some people that are on the call that are going to dislike it. I guess that's always the case. But the flat roof and the style of the lines on this building, it's a consistent architectural style, and it's done in a prairie style, and it's not supposed to have a pitched roof on it. this is what prairie style, it evokes images of the prairie, which is, more, I guess, horizontal and linear. If the question is regarding the side elevation here of the property, I could certainly look into adding some design elements that would sort of mirror or look to the front elevation of the rectory. But I think that some of it's there in terms of, if you look at some of these horizontal lines and the colors and whatnot, there is a consistent feel. But again, the desire was to make this something like this, which is, a architectural style that is indigenous to the area, for lack of a better way to put it.
Okay, I think we missed a question I asked earlier about how can these rental units be prevented from being used as Airbnbs?
So, first of all, I think that Chicago has a very strong didn't they just pass an ordinance against Airbnbs?
It is very difficult to turn a property into an Airbnb, but it's definitely not impossible. But I think the way around that would be is I'm not sure if you're planning on maintaining the rental building, but I think a lot of buildings have that restriction in their leases. But in terms of legislation, it is difficult to make things into an Airbnb, but not impossible.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything. I've never considered it as an option with any of our properties.
Okay, great. And then I guess this is a question somebody's asking, why do we need more TOD? And as an urban planner, I can answer that, but I'm not the one on the Q&A here tonight, so I'll give it to you, Scott.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, why do we need more TOD in this neighborhood?
Why do we need more TOD? Well, first of all, I'm not an urban planner, but I play one on TV. So this is no longer, it's no longer a true TOD project. But the argument for TOD just in general is that by putting the density near the transportation hubs, be it subway, be it buses, be it trains, you're putting it where people can have access to transportation and not have to rely on cars. The notion is that people living here, if they have good access to good public transportation, then they'll use it. And that's why urban planning density is focused on putting the density by transportation access.
Good answer. Thank you, Scott. And then I think another question is asking, I think they're asking the relationship between when the rectory will be redeveloped and the townhomes built. Will those construction projects be happening at the same time?
Yes, that would be the plan. They'd be both going on together.
And just to reiterate, I think I'm seeing a few questions about this in the chat. There is it's 1-for-1. You have one parking spot per unit in this building. There is parking, and it is the standard 1-for-1.
So the townhouse development is 1-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
The rectory building is not 1-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
The rectory, we're limited by, I'm going to say, the confines of the building itself, and the building has a garage on the alley, but it's not really possible to, there's a side of the building that's on the alley. The side of the building that's on the alley has a garage. There's no way really to get any additional parking into the building.
Okay, and I believe Kathleen has a question. I see she messaged me. If you want to unmute, just remember this time is for questions and not public comments. So if you have a comment, please phrase it as a question.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. Well, not a question. And again, the parking is problematic to my home that is directly next to it. It's pretty much hidden in all of your graphics as well. So you didn't change the parking. You still have it there and it's still pointing right at my first floor living quarters, which is a living room and 3 bedrooms. It's a low first floor and you have cars pointing directly at it. So that's extremely problematic to my property and to my tenants on my first floor, which one includes a child. So I don't know why cars are pointing at my house. You know, they usually butt up against different garages, you know, garage to garage or slab to slab on opposite sides of an alley, quite a distance from actual living quarters. So this is, you know, very problematic to me, my property, my tenants, my property value, and my safety again. So I don't see that that's changed at all. And that was my number one concern.
Hey, Kathleen, this is a time for questions and answers. I appreciate your comment. And you're free to put in public comment, or we can connect you with Scott after the meeting. So if you have a question, I would.
Then my question is, why didn't you change the parking arrangement? And why is it hidden on here? Because it's obviously a problem for everybody walking there and especially my home.
So, Kathleen, I do remember this having this conversation in the last meeting. You know, we looked, as I mentioned before, is taking the parking spaces into the units itself in the townhomes, which would have them exit onto Oakley. And from our perspective, that was a bigger problem because we would have 5 garages on Oakley that would require curb cuts. The community would have cars going over the sidewalk. You'd have a loss of the parkway space. You'd have a loss of all the parking along Oakley. And, you know, for the community at large, that seemed like a perhaps a more significant detriment to the community. It is typical for cars to access the property from the alley. I mean, that's how most homes access their property. And that's what we have here, are parking spaces that drive into the alley. I would note also, though, if we went with the single family home scenario, the single family proposal, where there was 5 homes, let me go back to that slide, you would probably have 5 3-car garages along the alley, and then you would have 5. You know, you'd have a significantly larger number of cars facing and driving in and out of the alley, all aimed directly at your property.
Yeah, you're missing a point. It's not just they're coming out. They're coming out to a building that's the apron is right on top of the alley. And I want to see the exact dimensions of how far that automobile is from my first floor. Like I mentioned to you, those windows are very low to the alley. And when you have windows open in the summer and I have bedrooms sitting right there, that's where they sit on the alley side. That's dangerous. And you show me where that happens in the city. I mean, I can go down every alley in my neighborhood. They go to garage or slab to slab. The living quarters is very far away. You're pointing cars where people are sleeping, and I have a baby there. So you say to the community at large, well, it is very dangerous to me and anybody that's living in that first floor.
Okay, I want to make sure we have time. I still have 1 person with their hand raised, and we're getting close to 8 o'clock. So DJ, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
And, you know, again, these people are on a 12-month lease. This home.
Kathleen, I'm sorry. We can set you up a separate meeting or separate email with Scott, but out of respect for your neighbors, we have to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. So it's DJ's turn to speak now.
Oh, it's dangerous. So leave it at that.
The option 1 proposal is adding approximately 30 cars to the neighborhood. I don't think you're being a responsible neighbor by putting that many cars in a neighborhood with no parking? Why are
Oh.
you just being absent of any additional parking other than one per the 5 units? You've got 12 units of apartments with 0 parking.
I'm sorry, can you, as a question,
The question is that the option 1 proposal is not offering, there are essentially 12 units that have no parking spaces. That could be 24 cars. And these projects, and you're only offering 1 for the townhomes.
oh, okay.
So
So,
you're putting 30 cars, the potential for 30 cars into the neighborhood with no parking.
so there is parking in the rectory. First of all, it just, I see that on the site plan. If you look where I'm sort of sketching out right here, there's a garage for the rectory on this property right here. So there is not, so there is not no parking for the rectory, but you're right, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It would be impossible to have 1-to-1 parking or any more parking in the rectory. The building wasn't built to have more parking than it was. The first story of the rectory is a half story below grade. There's no way to get parking in there. In order to have more parking in the rectory, it would require tearing down the rectory. So it's a balance, in terms of what the community wants. If the community says, I don't care about the rectory, I don't care about the affordability, then, option 2 has 3 garages for every single family home.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. I just put that comment form in the chat, and then I'll email it to everybody who registered for this meeting tomorrow, and we will also post a recording of this meeting online, and the public comment form and the recording will be advertised in our newsletter and on our website for the next 2 weeks. One quick plug, we unveiled a brand new website last Friday, so go to 40thward.org to check it out. It's really beautiful and it's really intuitive. Okay. The next question is about parking. I think we sort of just went over that. Here's another new question. Could the developer consider adding bollards or a guardrail along the north side of the alley to protect the house to the north?
So Kathleen, is your house built directly on the alley, or is there any kind of setback from the alley itself? It seems that Kathleen's mic
Hi,
is.
sorry about that. Sorry, I'm at a place where it's kind of loud. But the other thing is, why are you hiding that view? I want to see exactly, my house is the White House right there. It's right next to the alley. It's the first property in Oakley. So the building is very close up to the apron. It's a very teeny tiny apron, and then you're right at the alley. So, right where and then you've got the brick wall on the other side with the same apron space. It's tight. It's like right up to the property line, as well as that brick wall starts right there. So, I don't, it just doesn't make, I don't know where you're supposed to put that parking, but to face it.
Sure.
So
Kathleen,
sorry,
the question was, would I consider putting bollards?
The question was not from Kathleen, just to explain.
Oh, okay.
What's that?
The short answer is yes. I don't know if it's feasible, but it's not, it's certainly something I would consider.
Well, I was trying to figure out how it can possibly be code for you having, these are bedrooms. Those bedrooms are not on that they're on the second floor and the first floor. So I don't know why I'm still talking about this, why cars are pointing at my livelihood, my home, my tenants. It just seems crazy to put me in an unsafe position. with the parking. Those homes don't create that for me, but the parking does. Absolutely.
All right, everyone, it is almost 8 o'clock, so I think we're gonna end it here. If you had a question that wasn't answered, you can email info@40thward.org and we will get an answer for you shortly. You can fill out that public comment form the next 2 weeks. I encourage you to talk with your neighbors, share that link, share the recording to this meeting, and feel free to reach out with any questions. Thanks for joining me for another wonderful 40th Ward Community Zoning meeting, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Again, we have 2-week open comment period, and then we'll take a week to look over the comments, and our decision will be released at that time. So that's 3 weeks from today. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.